A towering high school bully, the kind who rules the hallways with a smirk and clenched fists, picks the wrong target. A girl who looks like she'd shatter under a harsh word, but harbors an explosive secret potent enough to burn his entire kingdom to ashes. This isn't just a tale of teenage tragedy. It's a slow-burning war where arrogance collides with a force it can't comprehend. Meet Isabella Izzy Torres, a soft-spoken transfer student stepping into the chaos of Westridge High in Dallas, Texas, armed with nothing but a battered backpack and a wary gaze. She's new, she's quiet, and to guys like Trent Maddox, the school's reigning terror with a quarterback's swagger and a predator's grin, she's fresh meat, an easy mark to toy with. He has no idea what's coming. What starts with his smug taunts and a giggling posse will lead to his own destruction, a collapse so brutal it leaves the school whispering for weeks. Stick around, because this isn't about a bully's triumph. It's about him choking on his own pride. Izzy Torres climbs off the rattling school bus, her sneakers hitting the cracked sidewalk with a soft thud. She pauses, squinting up at the sprawling brick facade of Westridge High, its faded blue banners fluttering lazily in the dry Texas breeze. The air smells of dust and diesel, tinged with the faint sweetness of honeysuckle clinging to a nearby fence. Around her, students spill out in waves. Girls with glossy ponytails giggling over their phones, boys in worn hoodies shoving each other as they jostle toward the entrance. Laughter bounces off the concrete, sharp and carefree, but to Izzy it's like a foreign language. She tightens her grip on her backpack straps, knuckles whitening against the frayed fabric. This isn't her first rodeo. Westridge is her fifth school in 4 years, each move a desperate reset button her mom hits whenever life gets too messy. New faces, new rules, same old game, head down, blend into the shadows, survive. But as she takes her first steps toward those double doors, a prickle runs down her spine. Something tells her this time won't be so simple. Izzy Torres slips through the double doors of Westridge High, the morning rush's clamor swallowing her like a wave. The hallway hums with a chaotic symphony. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking on worn linoleum, voices overlapping in a tangle of gossip and half-baked weekend plans. She keeps her eyes low, tracing the faded gold lines on the floor as she clutches a crumpled schedule in her hand. It's a familiar dance. Find her locker, map out her classes, scout the quiet corners where she can vanish at lunch. She's perfected the art of fading into the background, a ghost among strangers. Westridge isn't special, just another sprawling suburban school packed with kids who've grown up together, their cliques etched into the concrete long before she arrived. The football team's loud, the cheer squad's louder, and the pecking orders as rigid as the rusted bleachers out back. None of it matters to Izzy. She's got one mission: stay invisible. But staying invisible gets harder when the eyes start turning her way. A few heads swivel as she passes, curiosity flickering in their glances. The new girl, the outsider with no history to pin her down. She ignores them, weaving through the crowd until she reaches her locker, a dented metal box sandwiched between two others plastered with peeling stickers. She's twisting the combination lock when she feels it. A shift in the air, a ripple of attention that's not random. She doesn't need to look up to know who it is. Trent Maddox stands 20 feet down the hall, leaning against a row of lockers like he owns them, his broad shoulders filling out a Navy Letterman jacket. A knot of boys surrounds him, jocks with buzz cuts and smug grins, laughing too loud at something he said. Even from here, Izzy can feel the weight of his presence, the kind that bends the room around him. Tall, tanned, with a jawline chiseled from stone, Trent's the poster boy for untouchable. Star quarterback, rich kid, the guy every girl wants and every guy wants to be. But there's something else, something sharper. The way his friends hang on his every word. The way their laughter turns nervous when his voice drops low. Izzy's seen his type before. He's not just popular, he's a king, and kings don't like their kingdoms disturbed. She doesn't mean to catch his eye. She's shoving her math book into her locker when a hard shove hits her shoulder, sharp and deliberate. Her books crash to the floor with a heavy thud, pages splaying across the tiles. A ripple of snickers spreads down the hall, and Izzy's cheeks burn as she drops to her knees, scrambling to gather them. She keeps her head down, willing the moment to pass, but a shadow looms over her, blotting out the fluorescent lights. "Oh, damn," a voice drawls, smooth and mocking, laced with an edge that twists her stomach. "What do we have here?" She doesn't need to look up to know it's Trent. His tone's casual, like he's commenting on the weather, but it carries a threat, the purr of a cat circling a cornered mouse. She lifts her eyes slowly. He's standing there, arms crossed, that infuriating smirk stretching his lips, lips that have probably gotten him out of as much trouble as they've caused. His crew hovers behind him, grinning like they've just won a bet. "New kid or just lost?" Trent asks, tilting his head like he's sizing her up. Izzy doesn't answer. She grabs the last of her books, stands, and brushes past him, her shoulder grazing his arm as she moves. She can feel the heat of his stare on her back, but she keeps walking, chin up, refusing to take his bait. "Hey," he calls after her, louder now, his voice slicing through the hallway's din. "I'm talking to you, new girl. Where's your manners?" The words hang in the air, a challenge wrapped in a taunt. Izzy's step falters, but she doesn't turn. She's played this game before. Bullies like Trent thrive on the flinch, the stammer, the surrender. The best move is no move at all. But Trent's not the type to let silence slide. She feels a sharp tug on her backpack, not hard enough to throw her off balance, but enough to make her stop. The hall goes quiet, dozens of eyes locking onto the scene. She turns slowly, meeting his gaze for the first time. Up close, Trent's even more imposing. 6 feet of muscle and ego, his hazel eyes glinting with something dangerous. But there's a flicker in them, a spark of surprise when she doesn't shrink under his stare. "You shouldn't have done that," Izzy says, her voice low, steady, cutting through the tension like a blade. Trent raises an eyebrow, then chuckles, the sound mocking and echoing off the lockers. "Oh, really? And why's that, huh?" His smirk widens, daring her to back down. Izzy doesn't flinch. She holds his gaze, unblinking, letting the silence stretch until it feels like the air might snap. "You'll see," she says finally, almost a whisper, then turns and walks away. Behind her, his friends snicker, but it sounds forced, hollow. Trent's laugh fades, and though she doesn't look back, she knows he's watching her go, that smug grin faltering just a fraction. He has no idea what storm he's just kicked up. The rest of the day passes in a monotonous haze. Teachers droning, pencils scratching, the occasional glance from a classmate trying to figure her out. Izzy sticks to the edges, claiming a desk at the back of each room, head down but mind sharp. At lunch, she finds a spot by the farthest wall of the cafeteria, a concrete ledge where she can watch the room unnoticed. Trent and his crew hold court at the center table, their voices carrying over the clatter of trays, their laughter a weapon keeping everyone else in line. Every so often, she catches his eyes flicking her way, a quick calculating glance before he turns back to his audience. He doesn't approach, not yet, but she can feel the gears turning in his head. He's not done with her. She's not surprised. Guys like Trent don't let a challenge, real or imagined, slip through their fingers. When the final bell rings, the Dallas sun still blazes, turning the parking lot into a shimmering mirage of heat waves. Izzy slings her backpack over her shoulder and heads for the bus stop, the asphalt radiating warmth through her soles. She's halfway there when a voice cuts through the chatter of departing students. "Hey, new girl!" She turns, and there he is, Trent, hands in his pockets, that damn smirk still plastered on his face. A few of his friends linger a dozen yards back, watching like vultures circling a kill. Izzy sighs, shifting her weight. "What do you want?" she asks, her tone flat, bored. Trent saunters forward, closing the distance until he looms over her. "You've got a mouth on you," he says, his smirk sharpening. "Think you're too good to talk to me?" Izzy lets out a short, dry laugh, not nervous, not scared, just amused. It catches him off guard, his grin freezing for a split second before he recovers. "I think," she says, her voice measured, "you should walk away." Trent's eyes narrow, his jaw tightening. "And why's that?" he presses, stepping closer, his shadow swallowing hers. Izzy doesn't budge. She tilts her head slightly, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Because you don't know who you're messing with." He laughs again, louder this time, shaking his head like she's just told the dumbest joke in the world. "Who are you, huh? Some nobody with a big attitude?" Izzy doesn't answer. Instead, she slips a hand into her pocket, pulls out her phone and taps the screen once. A low, throaty roar rumbles through the air, a sound that doesn't belong in a mundane high school parking lot. Heads turn as a sleek black Mustang Shelby GT 500 pulls up to the curb, its engine growling like a caged beast. The tinted window rolls down, revealing a face that needs no introduction. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, his massive frame filling the driver's seat, his gaze locking onto Trent with the weight of a sledgehammer. Trent's smug grin vanishes, his mouth dropping open as the color drains from his face. Izzy glances at him, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "Still think I'm a nobody?" she asks, her voice soft but cutting. Trent doesn't answer. For the first time, he's got nothing to say. The Mustang's engine roars one last time before settling into a low, menacing hum, its glossy black body glinting in the late afternoon sun. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson doesn't say a word. Not yet. He just sits there, one massive hand on the wheel, his eyes boring into Trent Maddox with a calm intensity that could crack concrete. The air thickens, the parking lot chatter fading into stunned silence as students crane their necks to look. Trent stands frozen, his fists unclenching, his bravado evaporating like water on hot asphalt. His friends shift uncomfortably behind him, their smirks replaced by wide-eyed stares darting between Izzy and the hulking figure in the car. For the first time that day, maybe ever, Trent looks small, a king stripped of his crown in front of his own court. Izzy adjusts her backpack straps, exhaling slowly, like she's just finished a chore instead of flipping the script on Westridge High's Golden Boy. She steps toward the Mustang, her movements deliberate, unhurried, letting the moment sink in. "Get in, kid," Dwayne says finally, his voice deep and even, slicing through the silence like a blade. It's not a request. Izzy doesn't hesitate. She brushes past Trent, close enough to catch the faint twitch in his jaw, the way his Adam's apple bobs as he swallows. She yanks the passenger door open, slides into the leather seat, and pulls it shut with a soft click. The window rolls back up, sealing her off from the gaping crowd. Dwayne shifts the car into gear, and with a guttural roar, the Mustang peels away from the curb, leaving a swirl of dust and a parking lot full of whispers. Inside the car, the world shrinks to the engine's rumble and the muted blur of Dallas streets flashing past the tinted windows. The late sun paints the dashboard in streaks of amber and gold, catching the faint scars on Dwayne's knuckles as he taps the wheel. Izzy leans back, her fingers drumming lightly on her knee, the tension she's carried all day finally starting to unravel. Neither of them speaks for a long stretch, the silence comfortable, familiar. She glances at him, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on the road, that trademark calm masking the storm he could unleash if he chose to. "You okay?" he asks eventually, his voice low, almost lost in the car's rumble. Izzy nods, then lets out a soft, raspy laugh. "Yeah? That was a little extra, huh?" Dwayne's lips twitch into that half-smile she knows so well, the one that says he's amused, but not surprised. "A little," he agrees, his tone dry. "But it got the point across." She shakes her head, staring out the window as strip malls and gas stations slide by. I didn't want it to go down like that, she admits, her voice softening. Not so soon. I'd have handled it my way. Dwayne shoots her a sidelong glance, one eyebrow ticking up. And your way was what? Let that punk keep pushing you till you snapped? Izzy smirks, resting her head against the seat. Number I was waiting. For the right moment. You know, let him think he's winning then. She trails off, shrugging. Dwayne chuckles, a deep, rolling sound that fills the car. Sounds like something you'd do. Timing's everything, kid. She turns to him, the corner of her mouth lifting. Guess I learned from the best. He grins now, shaking his head. Smart ass. The banter settles between them like an old rhythm, easing the last of the day's weight off her shoulders. But even as they trade jabs, Izzy knows it's not over. Trent Maddox isn't the type to slink away quietly. Fear can turn to fury faster than a Texas storm, and she's just lit the match. They pull into the driveway of a low-slung house on the edge of town, all clean lines and tinted glass, tucked behind a row of scraggly mesquite trees. The Mustang's engine cuts off with a final growl, and Izzy unbuckles but doesn't move. Dwayne notices, his hand pausing on the door handle. What's up? He asks, his tone sharpening, attentive. Izzy bites her lip, staring at the dashboard. He's not done, she says finally, her voice even but laced with certainty. Dwayne studies her for a long beat, his dark eyes narrowing slightly. No, he agrees. He's not. Guys like that, they don't know when to quit. He leans back, resting his hands on the wheel. But you're not done with him either, are you? Izzy meets his gaze, a spark flaring in her hazel eyes. Not even close, she says, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Dwayne nods, a flash of pride crossing his face. Good, so what's the play? She hesitates, then leans forward, her voice dropping. I let him keep going. He's too cocky to stop. He'll overreach, screw up. And when he does, I won't have to lift a finger. He'll bury himself. Dwayne's grin widens, slow and approving. That's my girl, he says, clapping her shoulder. Patience is a weapon. Use it. Izzy nods, the plan settling into her bones like a promise. Trent thinks he's the hunter, but she's just turned him into the prey. The next morning, Westridge High is a different beast. Izzy steps off the bus and into a sea of stares and hushed murmurs, the air buzzing with the kind of energy that follows a scandal. Words spread like wildfire. By first period, everyone knows about the new girl and the Mustang, the quarterback and the rock. Some kids look at her with awe, others with envy. But most just watch, waiting for what's next. She keeps her pace steady, her expression blank, letting the whispers roll off her like rain. The hallway stretches ahead, a gauntlet of lockers and curious eyes. And there he is. Trent, leaning against the same spot as yesterday, arms crossed, his face a forced mask of indifference. His crew flanks him, tighter than before, their laughter louder, brittler. When he spots her, his eyes lock onto hers, but the smirk doesn't come. Not this time. Instead, there's something harder, something raw simmering beneath the surface. Izzy doesn't falter. She stares back a beat longer than necessary, then turns down the hall toward her first class. She can feel his gaze burning into her back, can hear the mutters of his friends as she passes. Thinks she's hot shit now. One of them, Ryan, a beefy linebacker with a buzz cut, hisses, loud enough for her to catch. She doesn't react, doesn't give them the satisfaction, but she files it away, another crack in their armor she can use later. By lunch, the tension's thicker. She grabs a tray and heads for her usual spot, threading through the crowded cafeteria. Halfway there, a foot lashes out. Ryan again, grinning dumbly as she stumbles, her tray clattering, but not falling. A few kids gasp, others laugh, their eyes darting between her and Trent's table. He sits there watching, his face unreadable. Izzy straightens, righting her tray with slow, deliberate calm. The room buzzes, waiting for her to snap, cry, run. She doesn't. She looks at Ryan, then Trent, and quirks her lips. "Didn't know you were still in preschool," she says, her voice cool, cutting. A wave of oohs ripples through the crowd, and Ryan's grin dies, his face flushing red. Trent tilts his head, eyes narrowing, but he doesn't move. Not yet. Izzy walks past them, sits down, and starts eating like nothing happened. But she can feel the shift, the way the room tilts slightly, the way Trent's grip slips just a fraction. He's not laughing now. He's thinking, plotting, and that's exactly what she wants. Let him dig his own grave. She's got all the time in the world. That afternoon, when the final bell rings, Izzy's not surprised to find her locker trashed. Books are strewn across the floor, pages torn, the inside scrawled with black marker. Crude words, jagged lines, a coward's rage. A small crowd lingers nearby, whispering, watching. She sighs, crouching to gather her things, her hands steady, her face blank. Across the hall, Trent leans against the wall, arms crossed, that smug smirk back in place. He wants a reaction, tears, anger, something to feed his ego. She gives him nothing. She stacks her books, shuts her locker with a soft click, and walks away, her footsteps echoing in the hush. His smirk twitches, uncertainty creeping into his eyes. He still doesn't get it, but he will. Izzy's not fighting him. She's letting him destroy himself, one stupid move at a time. That night, Izzy sits at the kitchen table, the faint chirp of cicadas drifting through the open window. The house is quiet, except for the occasional clink of ice in her glass as she absently swirls it, her fingers tracing the grain of the worn wood. Across the room, Dwayne leans against the counter, arms crossed, his massive frame relaxed but his eyes sharp, watching her like he can read the storm brewing in her head. The overhead light casts long shadows, catching the hard lines of his face and the faint smirk still lingering when he knows she's scheming. "They hit your locker today," he says, breaking the silence, his voice low but carrying the weight of a question. Izzy nods, her gaze fixed on the glass. "Yeah, books everywhere, marker all over it, real creative." Her tone's dry, almost amused, but there's a glint of something else. Resolve, maybe, or the first spark of a fire she's always kept banked. Dwayne tilts his head, studying her. "And you didn't do anything." It's not an accusation, just a statement, probing for what's next. She looks up, meeting his eyes, a faint smile curling her lips. "Didn't have to," she says. "He's doing it to himself. Every move he makes, he's just digging deeper." Dwayne's smirk widens, a flash of approval in his dark eyes. "You're playing a long game, kid. Risky, but smart." Izzy leans back in her chair, stretching her arms overhead. "Guys like Trent, they're predictable. He thinks he's untouchable, so he'll keep pushing, keep trying to prove he's still king. But the louder he gets, the more people see him for what he really is." She pauses, her voice dropping. "And when he slips, it won't be me taking him down, it'll be everyone else." Dwayne chuckles, shaking his head. "You sound like me 20 years ago. Hell, maybe smarter." He pushes off the counter, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. "Just don't let him get in your head while you're waiting for that slip." Izzy's smile fades, her fingers tightening around the glass. "He won't," she says, but there's a thread of steel in her voice, like she's convincing herself as much as him. She knows Trent isn't just a loudmouth with a bruised ego. He's dangerous in his own way, the kind who'll lash out harder when he feels cornered, and she's just cornered him in front of the whole school. The thought doesn't scare her, not exactly, but it keeps her sharp, keeps her thinking 3 steps ahead. Dwayne watches her a moment longer, then nods. "All right, you've got this. But if it gets messy, you tell me." She dips her head in a small nod, and he claps her shoulder before heading out of the kitchen, leaving her with her thoughts and the hum of the night outside. By the next morning, Westridge High is a pressure cooker ready to blow. Izzy feels it the second she steps off the bus. The air's thicker, the whispers sharper, the stares heavier. The parking lot standoff yesterday lit the fuse, and everyone knows it's only a matter of time before it blows. She keeps her head down, backpack slung over one shoulder, navigating the crowded halls like a ship cutting through rough seas. The murmurs follow her, a low hum building as she passes Trent's usual haunt. He's there, of course, leaning against the lockers with his arms crossed, his crew packed tighter around him than ever. Ryan's cracking his knuckles like he thinks it makes him look tough. Another guy, Jake, a wiry running back with a mean streak, mutters something under his breath, sparking a round of laughs. But Trent doesn't laugh. His hazel eyes track her, cold and unblinking, like a hawk sizing up its next meal. There's no smirk today, no easy swagger. Just a quiet, simmering rage that charges the air around him. Izzy meets his gaze for a split second, long enough to let him know she sees it, then turns away, her expression blank. She can feel his stare scorching her back as she heads to class, can hear his low growl as he mutters something to his friends. Whatever he's planning, it's coming soon. She's ready. Lunch is when it escalates. Izzy's halfway through the cafeteria, tray in hand, when Trent's voice cuts through the noise like a gunshot. "Yo, Torres!" he calls, loud enough to turn heads. The room quiets, Forks pausing mid-air, eyes swinging to the center table where he sits, one leg propped on a chair like he owns the place. "Still hiding behind your big bad babysitter?" His tone's mocking, but there's an edge to it, a crack in the confidence that wasn't there before. His friends snicker, but it sounds rehearsed, like they're following a script. Izzy doesn't stop. She sets her tray down at her usual spot, her movements slow, deliberate, giving the room time to settle into the tension. Then she turns, leaning against the table, arms crossed casually. "Funny," she says, her voice calm but carrying across the cafeteria. "You keep talking about my family like you didn't freeze up when you saw them." A wave of gasps and stifled laughs ripples through the crowd. Trent's face darkens, his jaw clenching so hard she can see the muscle twitch. Ryan shifts in his seat, looking like he wants to jump up but doesn't dare. Trent leans forward, his voice dropping but still loud enough to be heard. "You think you're tough?" he says, his words sharp, meant to cut. "Strutting around like you're better than us just because you've got some famous muscle backing you up?" Izzy doesn't flinch. She tilts her head, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "I don't need to prove anything, Trent," she says simply. "You're doing a great job proving who you are all by yourself." The cafeteria goes dead silent, the kind of quiet that rings in your ears. Trent's eyes narrow, his hands balling into fists on the table. For a second, she thinks he might stand, might charge across the room and do something stupid right there in front of everyone. But he doesn't. He forces a laugh, strained and tight, leaning back in his chair. "Keep talking, new girl," he says, his voice low. "You're gonna regret it." Izzy holds his gaze a moment longer, then shrugs and sits down, picking up her fork like the conversation's over. The room exhales, whispers erupting as kids lean into each other, dissecting every word. Trent's friends try to play it off, slapping his shoulder and laughing too loud, but the damage is done. He swung and missed, and everyone saw it. By the end of the day, Izzy knows something bigger's coming. She feels it in the way Trent's crew glares at her in the halls, in the way Jake, accidentally, rams her shoulder hard enough to bruise, in the way Ryan mutters threats under his breath when he thinks no one hears. They're circling, waiting for their shot, and Trent's the one holding the leash. She's not surprised when she opens her locker after last period and finds a folded note stuffed inside, the paper creased and smudged like it's been handled too much. She unfolds it slowly, her pulse steady despite the dozens of curious eyes watching from afar. The words are scrawled in jagged black ink. "You're done, Torres. Parking lot. 3:30. No signature, but it doesn't need one." She folds it back up, slips it into her pocket, and shuts her locker with a soft click. A few kids linger nearby, pretending not to stare. She ignores them, slings her backpack over her shoulder, and heads for the exit. The parking lot's a furnace, the asphalt shimmering with heat waves. Izzy steps outside, the sun glaring off hoods and stinging her eyes. She spots Trent instantly, leaning against a jacked-up silver pickup, arms crossed, his crew fanned out behind him like a pack of wolves. No teachers, no witnesses, just a handful of students at a safe distance, phones already out, ready to catch whatever goes down. Trent straightens as he sees her, that smirk back on his face, but it's different now. Less cocky, more desperate. Like he needs this to prove something. "Didn't think you'd show," he calls, his voice carrying across the lot. "Guess you're braver than you look." Izzy stops a few feet away, her stance loose, her backpack slung over one shoulder. "I'm here," she says, her tone flat. "What do you want, Trent?" He steps forward, closing the gap, his height and bulk casting a shadow over her. "I want to know why you think you can waltz into my school and act like you run it," he says, his voice low, dangerous. "You think that stunt with your buddy makes you untouchable? You're nothing, Torres, just a nobody with a loud mouth." His friends murmur agreement, but it sounds hollow, like they're trying to convince themselves as much as her. Izzy tilts her head, studying him. Up close, she can see the cracks, the sweat beading on his forehead, the way his hands twitch like he's not sure whether to clench them or swing. He's unraveling, and he doesn't even know it. "You're wrong," she says softly, her voice cutting through his rant. "I don't want to run anything. I just want to be left alone. But you can't do that, can you? You need people bowing, laughing at your jokes, scared of you, and when they don't..." She trails off, letting the words hang. "You lose it." Trent's face twists, a flash of something raw, anger, maybe fear, crossing his features before he buries it. "You don't know shit about me," he snaps, stepping closer, his voice rising. "You think you're so smart? You think you can just..." He cuts himself off, chest heaving, hands balling into fists. Izzy doesn't move, doesn't blink, just watches him with a calm that seems to enrage him more. "Walk away, Trent," she says, her voice soft but firm. "Last chance." He laughs, a harsh barking sound, shaking his head. "You're the one who's done," he says, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You hear me? Done." Izzy doesn't reply. She just stands there, letting his words echo in the space between them, letting the weight of his anger crash over her. The crowd shifts, phones still raised, capturing every second. Trent's friends egg him on, their voices a low chant. But he doesn't move. Not yet. And then from the edge of the parking lot, a low rumble breaks the tension. A familiar sound, deep and throaty, like distant thunder. Heads turn as the black Mustang rolls up, slow and deliberate, its engine purring softly as it idles at the curb. Dwayne doesn't get out, doesn't need to. His presence is enough, a quiet reminder of the line Trent's about to cross. Trent freezes, his eyes flicking to the car, then back to Izzy. His smirk's gone, replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. "This isn't over," he mutters, his voice low, almost lost in the engine's growl. Izzy tilts her head, a faint smile curling her lips. "It never was," she says, then turns and walks to the Mustang, leaving Trent standing there, his kingdom crumbling under the weight of his own words. The next day at Westridge High feels like stepping into a thundercloud. Thick, heavy, ready to break. Izzy senses it the moment she steps off the bus, the air now crackling with something beyond gossip. It's anticipation. The electric snap in the space between glances, in the way students cluster tighter, their whispers sharp and urgent. Yesterday's parking lot standoff lit the match, and everyone knows it's only a matter of time before it blows. She adjusts her backpack, her steps steady despite the hundreds of eyes tracking her across the lot and into the school. The hallway stretches ahead, a tunnel of lockers and tension, and Trent's nowhere in sight. Not yet. But she can feel him, a shadow lurking just out of view, waiting to strike. First period passes in a blur, the teacher's voice a dull buzz against the roar of her own thoughts. Izzy sits in the back, her pencil tapping a steady rhythm on her notebook, her mind running through every move Trent might make. He's been humiliated twice now. Once in front of his crew, once in front of the school, and guys like him don't stay down. He'll hit back, hard, and she's ready. When the lunch bell rings, the whispers have turned into a low roar, snippets of conversation drifting past her as she moves through the hall. Heard he's pissed? She's so dead. No way he lets this slide. Izzy keeps her face blank, her pace even, but her pulse kicks up a notch. Whatever's coming, it's coming soon. The cafeteria's a powder keg when she walks in. The usual chaos, trays clattering, voices overlapping, feels muted, taut, like the room's holding its breath. She grabs her tray, threads through the crowd, her eyes scanning for Trent. He's not at his usual table, and that puts her on edge. His crew's there, though. Ryan, Jake, and a few others, huddled together, their heads bent low, their laughter forced and ragged. She catches Ryan's eye as she passes, and he smirks, his meaty hand flexing like he's itching to use it. She ignores him, claiming her spot by the wall, but the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Something's off. She takes a bite of her sandwich, chewing slowly, her senses on high alert. Then it happens. A hush sweeps the cafeteria, starting at the doors and spreading fast. Izzy looks up just as Trent strides in, his broad shoulders squared, his face a mask of cold fury. He doesn't head for his table. He's coming straight for her, his boots thudding against the linoleum with purpose. The room goes silent, except for the scrape of a few chairs as kids shift for a better view. He stops a few feet away, towering over her, his fists clenched at his sides. "Get up," he says, his voice low, trembling with barely contained rage. Izzy doesn't move. She sets her sandwich down, wipes her hands on a napkin, and leans back in her chair, meeting his gaze with a calm that seems to set him ablaze. "Why?" she asks, her tone even, almost bored. Trent's nostrils flare, his chest heaving. "You think you can sit there like nothing's wrong?" he snaps, his voice pitching up. "You think you can make me look like a fool and walk away?" A few of his friends stand, edging closer, their eyes darting between him and her. The crowd leans in, phones slipping out of pockets, ready for the explosion. Izzy tilts her head, her expression unchanged. "I didn't make you look like anything, Trent," she says. "You did that all by yourself." His face twists, a growl breaking through the mask. "Shut up," he hisses, stepping closer, his shadow swallowing her. "You don't get it, do you? This is my school, my rules, and you're nothing. Just a wannabe with a big shot to hide behind." Izzy stands, slow and deliberate, her movement slicing through the tension like a knife. She's a foot shorter than him, but there's something in her stance, unyielding, unshaken, that makes the room feel smaller. "If I'm nothing," she says, her voice steady, "then why are you so scared of me?" The words land like a punch, and for a split second, Trent falters, his eyes widening before narrowing again. "I'm not scared of you," he spits, but it sounds hollow, desperate. He steps closer, close enough that she can feel the heat rolling off him, smell the sweat and anger seeping from his skin. "You're done, Torres. You hear me? Done." Before she can respond, Ryan lunges from the side, his arms swinging out to shove her. Izzy sidesteps, quick and fluid, letting his momentum carry him past her. He stumbles, catching himself on a table, and the crowd gasps collectively. Trent's face flushes red, his control slipping as he snatches her backpack off the chair and hurls it across the room. Books and papers scatter, skidding across the floor, and a few kids laugh, nervous, uncertain. "Pick it up," he snarls, his voice cracking. "Pick it up or I swear." He doesn't finish. Izzy doesn't move. She just stands there, arms crossed, watching him unravel. "Or what?" she asks, her voice soft but sharp. "What are you gonna do, Trent? Hit me, right here in front of everyone?" The question hangs in the air, heavy and damning. Trent freezes, his fist half raised, his breathing ragged. The cafeteria's a tomb, every eye on him, waiting. His friends shift, restless, no longer egging him on. Ryan straightens, brushing off his stumble, but even he looks unsure. Trent's gaze darts around, taking in the phones, the faces, the silent judgment closing in. He wanted a fight, a chance to reassert his dominance, but Izzy's not giving it to him, not the way he expects. She doesn't yell, doesn't cry, doesn't back down. She just stands there, letting him drown in his own fury. And then the hammer drops. A sharp voice cuts through the silence. "Maddox!" And the crowd parts as Mr. Hargrove, the burly vice principal, storms in, tie askew, face red with anger. "What the hell is going on here?" he barks, his eyes boring into Trent. Before Trent can answer, a girl from the back, Lila, a quiet junior with a knack for blending in, steps forward, her phone trembling in her hand. "He started it," she says, her voice shaky but firm. "He's been starting it all week. Look." She holds up the screen, and even from a distance, Izzy can see the video. Trent throwing her backpack, Ryan lunging, the whole ugly scene captured in shaky pixels. Trent's face pales, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "That's not," he stammers, but Hargrove cuts him off, snatching the phone from Lila's hand. The vice principal's eyes narrow as he watches, his jaw tightening with every second. "Office, now," he snaps, pointing at Trent, then Ryan. "Both of you." Trent doesn't move at first, his fists still clenched, his chest heaving. He glares at Izzy, pure, unfiltered hatred, but there's something else there too. Defeat. He swung for the fences and missed, and now the whole school's seen it. As Hargrove marches Trent and Ryan out, the cafeteria erupts, whispers turning to shouts, kids crowding around Lila's phone, others swarming Izzy with questions she doesn't answer. She bends down, gathering her scattered books with the same calm she's held on to, her hands steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her. She can feel the shift, the way the room tilts away from Trent and toward her, not as a victor, but as something else, something quieter, stronger. She knew this would happen, bet on Trent's ego being his own worst enemy, and she won. That afternoon, the school's still buzzing as Izzy steps into the parking lot. The Mustang's there, idling at the curb, Dwayne's massive frame filling the driver's seat. She slides in, dropping her backpack at her feet with a soft thud. He doesn't start the engine right away, just turns to her, one eyebrow raised. "Heard there was a show at lunch," he says, his tone dry but laced with curiosity. Izzy smirks, resting her head against the seat. "Yeah, he put on a good one." Dwayne chuckles, shaking his head. "And you didn't even have to throw a punch." She nods, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Didn't need to. He knocked himself out." Dwayne studies her for a moment, pride flickering in his eyes. "You okay?" he asks, softer this time. Izzy exhales, the last of the day's tension slipping away. "Yeah," she says, "I'm good." He grins, twisting the key in the ignition. The Mustang roars to life, pulling away from the curb as the school fades in the rear view. Trent Maddox's kingdom is in ruins, and Izzy didn't lift a finger to topple it. He did it all himself, just like she planned. The storm's passed, and she's still standing. The Mustang rumbles down sun-bleached Dallas streets, the city sprawling in a haze of heat and concrete. Izzy rests her head against the window, the cool glass a stark contrast to the warmth still radiating from the day. Her backpack sits heavy at her feet, its torn pages and scrawled insults a silent trophy of the chaos she's just navigated. Dwayne keeps his eyes on the road, his big hands steady on the wheel, but every so often he glances her way, a faint smirk playing on his lips. The silence between them isn't empty. It's full, thick with the unspoken understanding of what she's pulled off. Westridge High is behind them now, a speck in the rear view, but the echoes of the day linger, a storm that's finally blown itself out. Back at school, the fallout's immediate and brutal. By the next morning, Trent Maddox is a ghost story whispered in the halls. Lila's video wasn't the only one. Half a dozen more surfaced overnight, shaky clips from different angles showing his meltdown in the cafeteria, his snarl as he threw Izzy's backpack, the way his voice cracked when he realized he'd lost. The administration didn't waste time. Trent and Ryan were hauled into the principal's office before first period, their parents called, their fates sealed with a week's suspension and a permanent mark on their records. Whispers say Trent's spot on the football team's on the chopping block, too. The coach doesn't take kindly to players turning the school into a circus. His crew scatters, Jake and the others slinking off to save their own skins, leaving Trent alone with the wreckage. Izzy hears it all secondhand, bits and pieces filtering through the buzz as she moves through the day. She doesn't seek it out, doesn't gloat. She doesn't need to. The halls feel different now, lighter, like a weight's been lifted. Kids still stare, but the looks have shifted. Curiosity turning to respect, suspicion to something close to awe. A few even nod at her in passing, small gestures that say more than words. She keeps her routine, back of the classroom, edge of the cafeteria, bus stop at dusk, but there's a quiet confidence in her step, a glint in her hazel eyes that wasn't there before. She came to Westridge wanting to disappear, but she's ended up rewriting the rules. That night, she sits on the front porch, the sky bruising purple as the sun dips below the horizon. The air's thick with the scent of mesquite and the distant hum of traffic, a Texas lullaby she's grown to love. Dwayne steps out, a cold soda in each hand, and settles onto the step beside her with a groan. He hands her one, the can sweating in the humid evening, and they sit there, watching the last streaks of light fade. "Heard the kid's done," Dwayne says after a while, his voice casual but tinged with satisfaction. "Team's talking about benching him. Friends bailed. Sounds like he's got nothing left." Izzy takes a sip, the fizz sharp on her tongue. "Yeah," she says, her voice soft but steady. "He built it all on sand. One push, and it fell." Dwayne chuckles, shaking his head. "You didn't even push, kid. You just stood there and let him trip over himself." She smirks, rolling the can between her palms. "Sometimes that's all it takes. Guys like him, they're loud, but they're fragile. They need people watching, cheering, scared. Without that, they've got nothing to stand on." He nods, leaning back on his elbows, his gaze drifting to the darkening sky. "You handed him the rope, and he hanged himself with it. Smartest damn thing I've seen in a while." Izzy doesn't say anything for a moment, just lets the words settle. She thinks about Trent, his swagger, his taunts, the way he ruled Westridge like a king until he didn't. She thinks about that first day, her books hitting the floor, the tug on her backpack, the note in her locker. She'd seen him coming from a mile away, had known his type from every school she'd left behind. But this time, she didn't run. She stayed, watched, waited, and let him dig his own grave. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about survival, about proving she could stand her ground without becoming him. "Now what?" Dwayne asks, snapping her out of her reverie. She turns to him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Now I get to breathe," she says. "Maybe even enjoy this place for once." He laughs, a deep, rolling sound that echoes into the night. "That's my girl," he says, clapping her shoulder hard enough to make her wince. "You earned it?" She nods, tipping her head back to watch the stars peek through the haze. For the first time since she stepped off that bus, the weight on her chest is gone, replaced by something lighter. Freedom, maybe, or just the quiet thrill of knowing she's won. Trent Maddox becomes a cautionary tale, a name muttered with a shake of the head, a lesson carved into Westridge's walls. He'd built his power on fear and noise, a throne of smoke that collapsed when the wind shifted. Izzy didn't need to shout, didn't need to fight. She took him down with patience, with silence, with the kind of strength that doesn't need an audience to prove itself. And as the days stretch into weeks, she settles into her new life, no longer the outsider, no longer the target, but something else entirely, a force, quiet and unshakable, that no one will underestimate again. The message is simple, etched into the story like a lesson in stone. Real strength doesn't roar, it waits. It's not the loudest voice that wins, but the one that knows when to speak, when to stand, when to let the world see the truth for itself. Trent fell because he needed to be seen. Izzy rose because she didn't. And in the end, that's what lasts. Not the noise, but the silence that outlives it.